The air in El Cacao Dormido hung thick, a bittersweet ghost of chocolate passed, mingling with the scent of dust and neglect. It clung to the dark wood counters, filmed the antique copper pots hanging like forgotten promises, and settled deep in Elena Ramirez's lungs. Grief was a physical weight, pressing down as she surveyed the small shop nestled in a shadowed alley near Seville's great cathedral. This place, her abuela Sofia's soul poured into every tile and tarnished fixture, was fading, dying. And Sofia, the vibrant heart of it all, was gone, leaving behind only silence and the looming threat of bankruptcy. Elena ran a hand over the cool, worn marble countertop where Sofia used to expertly temper chocolate, her movements a dance Elena had watched, mesmerized since childhood. 28 years old, armed with a brief stint in culinary school, but mostly steeped in Sofia's hands-on wisdom, she felt impossibly young and terrifyingly responsible. Returning to Seville after her grandmother's sudden passing hadn't been a choice. It was an instinct, a homing pull towards this legacy of scent and flavor. Mateo Vargas, Sofia's quiet shadow for 30 years, emerged from the tiny back kitchen, wiping his hands on a perpetually cocoa-dusted apron. His eyes, kind but etched with worry, met hers. "Señorita Elena," he murmured, his voice raspy with disuse. "The suppliers, they are becoming impatient." Impatience was an understatement. Bills were piled high, the gleaming espresso machine was silent, and the vibrant energy that once spilled onto the cobblestones had dwindled to a trickle of pitying tourists and loyal old neighbors buying the last of the dwindling stock. "I know, Mateo," Elena sighed, pushing back a stray wave of dark hair. Practicality warred with the ache in her chest. I'm staying. We're staying." She hadn't planned this. Her life, her modest savings, were meant for something else, something less tied to the ghosts of the past. But abandoning El Cacao Dormido felt like abandoning Sofia all over again. "We'll make it work. We have to." Mateo's shoulders relaxed slightly, a flicker of hope returning to his eyes. "Your grandmother, she would be glad. You have her hands, señorita." Those hands, stained now with dust instead of chocolate, clenched. She had Sofia's hands, yes, but did she have her magic? Did she have the strength? Pouring her small savings into this felt like leaping into a dark, swirling river of debt. She spent days cleaning, polishing copper until it gleamed faintly, sorting through Sofia's meticulously handwritten recipe notebooks, treasures filled with spidery script detailing precise temperatures, ingredient sources, and cryptic annotations only another chocolatier could decipher. The scent of lemon oil and beeswax replaced the dust. Slowly, tentatively, life began to stir within the sleeping cacao shop. She started small, mastering the classics first. The impossibly thick, dark chocolate a la taza perfect for dipping crisp churros, the simple almond clusters, the traditional Turon recipes Sofia only made at Christmas, but whose secrets Elena now unearthed. Then, summoning a courage she didn't feel, she began to experiment, adding her own hesitant signature. A pinch of smoked paprika and chili in the dark hot chocolate, creating a slow burn that surprised and delighted. Finely ground orange peel and toasted Marcona almonds folded into bittersweet ganache for truffles that tasted like Andalusian sunshine. The first time a customer's eyes widened in pleasure after tasting the spiced chocolate, a fragile warmth spread through Elena's chest. Mateo offered a rare, quiet smile. Locals, initially drawn by nostalgia, started returning for Elena's creations. A low murmur of approval began to ripple through the neighborhood. It was during this fragile bloom of hope that her cousin, Javier Moreno, appeared. He swept in, all polished shoes and sharp suit, smelling faintly of expensive cologne that seemed out of place amidst the earthy aroma of cocoa. He was a few years older, always ambitious, always, Elena sensed, slightly resentful of Sofia's clear favoritism towards her. "Elena, prima," he said, his smile perfectly charming but stopping short of his eyes. He offered condolences that felt rehearsed, his gaze sweeping assessingly over the reviving shop. Tragic about Abuela, such a loss. He lingered, asking pointed questions about suppliers, about foot traffic, about the building's lease, cloaking his curiosity in solicitous concern. "If you need anything at all to, modernize this place a little, just ask. It's a tough business." Elena thanked him, a familiar prickle of unease surfacing. Javier had always orbited the shop, full of grand ideas Sofia had gently but firmly dismissed. She pushed the feeling down, He was family, after all. He was just trying to be supportive. She focused instead on the steady rhythm of melting, tempering, shaping, the alchemy that turned simple beans into moments of joy. The spiced hot chocolate became a local favourite. The orange almond truffles were whispered about. El Cacao Dormido was breathing again. The announcement hit Elena like a physical blow. A glossy flyer slipped under the door overnight, proclaimed the grand opening of Chocolux, Seville's premier modern chocolaterie. The location, a busier street just 2 corners away, perfectly positioned to intercept tourists heading towards the cathedral. The proprietor? Javier Moreno. Elena's blood ran cold. She crumpled the flyer, the slick paper resisting. Mateo found her staring blankly at the offending advertisement, her knuckles white. He picked up a second flyer from the floor, his face grim. He was asking many questions, Mateo said softly, his earlier unease now hardening into certainty. Before you fully took over, when things were chaotic after Senora Sofia, he offered to help organize. Spent hours back here. Mateo gestured towards the small kitchen, towards the now secured recipe books. I thought he was family, helping. The insincere condolences, the probing questions, the vague offers to modernize. It all clicked into place with sickening clarity. Elena felt a wave of nausea. She grabbed her shawl and hurried out, ignoring Mateo's concerned call. The walk was short. The narrow streets of the Santa Cruz district, usually a comfort, now felt suffocating. Chocolux assaulted the senses. Bright, minimalist, almost sterile compared to the warm history of El Cacao Dormido. Chrome and glass gleamed under harsh spotlights, and there, displayed prominently in a refrigerated case, were rows of truffles dusted with paprika and a sleek machine dispensing steaming hot chocolate. Elena's breath hitched. She pushed inside, the automatic door whispering open. Javier, beaming, stood schmoozing with a well-dressed couple. He spotted Elena, his smile faltering for only a fraction of a second before snapping back into place, brighter, falser. "Elena, what a surprise! Come to wish me luck!" Her voice was low, trembling slightly. "Javier, what is this? This is the future," he gestured expansively, taking inspiration from the best, updating it for a modern palate. "Seville needs something fresh, don't you think?" "Inspiration? Javier, those are—" She couldn't bring herself to say it. "My recipes, Abuela's legacy." He leaned closer, his voice dropping, the charm replaced by a flinty edge. "Business is business, Elena. You can't hoard tradition. Besides," he added, straightening his tie, "competition is healthy. May the best chocolatier win." Elena turned and fled, the artificial brightness of Chocolux burning her eyes. Back in the comforting dimness of her own shop, the anger finally broke through the shock. Betrayal, sharp and bitter, tasted worse than any poorly made chocolate. Mateo placed a small cup of her own spiced hot chocolate in her hands. "He copied the recipes?" she whispered, looking at the rich, dark liquid. "The heart, señorita," Mateo said quietly. "He can copy the words, the ingredients, but he cannot copy the heart, or your grandmother's spirit, or yours." But Javier was clever. He didn't just copy. He adapted slightly, enough to claim originality if challenged legally, though anyone familiar with Elena's creations could see the blatant imitation. And he undercut her prices savagely. Chocolux, with its prime location and flashy marketing, started drawing customers. Tourists easily swayed by novelty, even some locals curious about the buzz. Worse, the rumours started. Subtle whispers slithering through the neighbourhood. Elena was struggling financially. She was inexperienced, relying on her grandmother's fading name. The old shop wasn't up to modern hygiene standards. She was disrespecting tradition by changing things. Javier, meanwhile, cultivated an image of a savvy entrepreneur, charming neighbours, offering discounts to nearby businesses, painting Elena as resistant to progress. Elena saw the impact almost immediately. Fewer familiar faces, more hesitant glances from passers-by. The fragile recovery stalled. Doubt began to creep in, cold and insidious. Could she really do this? Was Javier right? Was she just clinging sentimentally to a relic? The stress became a constant companion, lodging itself behind her eyes as a persistent, throbbing migraine. Sleep offered little escape, her dreams filled with melting chocolate and Javier's smug smile. She tried confronting him again, presenting him with his own flyer next to her handwritten recipe notes. He laughed it off. "Coincidence, primer. Great minds think alike, eh? You should be flattered." She poured her anxiety and anger into her work, becoming even more meticulous. She insisted on the finest cacao beans, sourced directly from suppliers Sophia had trusted for decades, even though cheaper alternatives beckoned. She spent hours perfecting the temper of her chocolate, ensuring that satisfying snap Javier's slightly waxy creations lacked. She hand-wrote little cards explaining the origin of the ingredients, the history of a particular recipe, placing them beside her displays. She talked to customers, sharing stories of Sophia, her passion infectious. Quality and authenticity became her shield and her sword. She redoubled her efforts to connect with the community. She offered Senora Carmen, the elderly owner of the traditional ceramics shop next door, a daily cup of hot chocolate, asking about her family, listening to her stories about the neighborhood's past. Carmen, initially reserved, perhaps swayed by Javier's earlier charm offensive, slowly thawed. Her sharp eyes missed little. "Reputation, child," she advised one afternoon, sipping her chocolate slowly. "It takes years to build, seconds to shatter. Be careful who you trust, especially family." Elena started noticing inconsistencies in Chocolux's offerings. A bitterness in the hot chocolate one day, a grainy texture in the ganache the next. Mateo confirmed through supplier gossip. Javier was already switching to cheaper compound chocolate for some items, cutting corners to maintain his lower prices and maximize profit. He lacked the patience, the dedication, the heart. But would customers notice before it was too late for El Cacao Dormido? The financial pressure was a tightening knot in Elena's stomach. The rent was due, suppliers needed paying, and the bright false promise of Chocolux continued to siphon away her lifeline. Javier tried to poach one of her part-time helpers, offering higher wages. The young woman, loyal to Elena, refused and reported the attempt. The cousinly mask was slipping, revealing the desperation beneath. The news arrived via Senora Carmen, who had become a staunch, if quiet, ally. "Isabella Rossi is back in town," she announced, carefully wrapping a delicate ceramic tile. "The food blogger, writes for El Correo de Andalucia, the big newspaper. They say she's doing a feature on Seville's chocolate scene, comparing the old and the new." Elena's heart leaped, then plummeted. Isabella Rossi. Her reviews were legendary, insightful, influential, brutally honest. A glowing review could save El Cacao Dormido. A negative one, or even a lukewarm comparison favouring Chocolux's novelty, could be the final nail in the coffin. This was it, a terrifying, unavoidable showdown. The risk felt enormous, the potential reward equally vast. The tension radiating from Chocolux became palpable. Javier, usually seen glad-handing tourists, seemed agitated. Elena saw him pacing outside his shop, phone pressed to his ear, his gestures sharp. He knew Rossi's review could expose the hollowness of his enterprise. His corner-cutting, his imitation. It wouldn't stand up to her discerning palate. His panic manifested predictably. A few days later, a stern-faced municipal inspector arrived at El Cacao Dormido, citing an anonymous complaint about hygiene standards. Elena's stomach twisted, but she calmly guided him through her spotless kitchen, explaining her processes, showing him her meticulously kept records. Mateo stood by, silent but radiating indignation. The inspector, finding nothing amiss, offered a curt apology and left. Elena knew, without a doubt, who was behind the anonymous complaint. The next day, Mateo reported that Javier had approached him directly after work, offering him double his salary, a management title, and a signing bonus to jump ship to Chocolux immediately. He said he needed someone with real experience, Mateo recounted, his usual calm ruffled by anger. He thinks loyalty can be bought, like cheap cacao beans. Mateo had, of course, refused point-blank, telling Javier exactly what he thought of his methods and his chocolate. The failed sabotage attempts only fueled Javier's desperation. Elena knew he wouldn't stop. He might try to intercept Rossi, ply her with charm and freebies, poison her opinion before she even tasted Elena's chocolate. Direct confrontation hadn't worked. Defending herself felt passive. She needed to seize the narrative, to showcase the soul Javier couldn't steal. An idea sparked, fueled by righteous anger and a surge of protective love for her grandmother's legacy. She wouldn't just wait for the review. She would create her own stage. "Mateo, Senora Carmen," she announced that evening, her voice ringing with newfound resolve. "We're going to host an event, a traditional Seville chocolate tasting, the day before Rossi is rumoured to start her reviews." Mateo raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Carmen nodded slowly, a shrewd glint in her eyes. Show them the difference, Elena. Let them taste the truth. The next few days were a blur of focused activity. Elena worked tirelessly, pushing aside her exhaustion. She selected her finest creations, the classic hot chocolate, thick and dark, her signature spiced version, the orange almond truffles, delicate bonbons filled with local honey and sherry ganache, even small squares of a simple, intensely flavored dark chocolate bar made from single-origin beans Sophia had prized. She planned meticulous pairings, a hint of sea salt with one dark chocolate, toasted almonds with another. She designed simple, elegant invitations, handwriting each one. She invited Signora Carmen and other supportive neighborhood shopkeepers, loyal customers, and crucially, Isabella Rossi herself, sending the invitation via Signora Carmen, who knew someone at the newspaper office. She didn't know if the blogger would come, but she had to try. The day of the tasting dawned bright and warm, typical Seville sunshine flooding the narrow street. Elena arranged small tables draped in white linen inside the shop. Matteo polished the antique silverware Sophia had used for special occasions. The air hummed, not with neglect, but with anticipation and the rich, complex aroma of pure chocolate. Elena stood ready, wearing Sophia's favorite apron over a simple black dress. She felt a strange calm settle over her. This wasn't just about business survival anymore. It was about honor. Guests began to arrive, familiar faces offering encouraging smiles, curious neighbors, the other shopkeepers. Then, just as Elena was demonstrating the art of hand-tempering chocolate on the cool marble slab, Isabella Rossi walked in. She was younger than Elena expected, with sharp, intelligent eyes and an unassuming air. She nodded politely, her gaze taking in the historic shop, the gleaming copper, Elena's focused movements. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands remained steady. She continued her demonstration, explaining the science and artistry, her voice clear and passionate. She spoke about the cacao beans, their origins, the importance of ethical sourcing, things Sophia had instilled in her. She shared anecdotes about her grandmother, about the shop's history, her words weaving a story of tradition, passion, and resilience. Then came the tasting. Small, exquisite portions served on Signora Carmen's borrowed ceramic plates. Elena moved among the guests, explaining each creation, answering questions. She didn't mention Javier or Chocolux once. She didn't need to. The quality spoke for itself, the depth of flavor, the smooth texture, the lack of any artificiality. She saw Rossi close her eyes briefly as she tasted the spiced hot chocolate, a small, thoughtful frown creasing her brow as she savored an orange almond truffle. Elena caught sight of Javier lurking across the street, trying to appear casual, his eyes fixed on the crowd inside her shop. He'd sent one of his young employees to hover near the doorway, clearly trying to eavesdrop. Elena met Javier's gaze across the cobblestones, holding it for a moment, her expression calm but resolute. Let him watch. Let him see what authenticity looked like. The contrast between her warm, history-filled shop, alive with genuine appreciation, and his sterile establishment built on theft, couldn't have been starker. Current part characters, 6 and 113 total characters, 17, 10, 248. Isabella Rossi stayed for nearly an hour, tasting everything, listening intently, asking insightful questions not just about the chocolate, but about Sophia, about the challenges of maintaining tradition in a changing market. When she left, she offered Elena a brief, enigmatic smile and a simple, "Thank you, Elena, that was illuminating." Elena could only nod, her throat tight, unsure if she had succeeded or failed. The review appeared online 2 days later, and quickly in the print edition of El Correo. Elena's hands trembled as she read it, Matteo and Signora Carmen peering anxiously over her shoulder. Rossi began by painting a picture of Seville's evolving culinary landscape, the tension between cherished history and the allure of the new. Then she turned to the chocolate. She described Chocolux first, sleek, modern, and undeniably ambitious. She wrote, Javier Moreno's establishment offers interpretations of classic flavors with a contemporary twist. She acknowledged the popular appeal of certain items, but then delivered the blow, subtly but devastatingly. While technically competent, some offerings lack the depth and nuance one hopes for. The signature spiced chocolate, though initially intriguing, carries a faint, almost chemical aftertaste upon reflection. The truffles, while prettily presented, possess a texture that suggests efficiency over artistry, perhaps relying on commercially expedient ingredients. Then came the section on El Cacao Dormido. Rossi wrote with palpable warmth, describing the shop's atmosphere as stepping into a living piece of Seville's history. She lauded Elena's fierce dedication to her grandmother's legacy, her respect for ingredients, and her innate talent. Of the spiced hot chocolate, she rhapsodized, a revelation. Dark, complex, with a perfectly judged warmth that unfolds slowly, speaking of quality beans and patient craftsmanship. The orange almond truffles were sunshine captured in ganache. She concluded, Elena Ramirez is not merely preserving tradition, she is breathing new life into it. El Cacao Dormido offers more than just chocolate. It offers authenticity, passion, and a connection to the city's soul. Some things, it seems, cannot be easily replicated or modernized. She even included a carefully worded sentence about the striking similarities in signature offerings between the two establishments, leaving readers to draw their own conclusions about inspiration versus imitation. The impact was immediate and decisive. Phones started ringing at El Cacao Dormido, booking requests for tastings, inquiries about special orders. Tourists arrived clutching the newspaper article, eager to taste the authentic Seville chocolate. Locals, who had perhaps been swayed by Javier's novelty, returned, sheepish but enthusiastic. Senora Carmen reported that neighborhood gossip now firmly favored Elena, praising her resilience and condemning Javier's underhanded tactics. Elena hired another part-time assistant to handle the increased demand. Mateo, his face alight with quiet satisfaction, worked alongside her, the rhythm of the shop now energetic and purposeful. The stress migraines eased, replaced by the pleasant ache of long, fulfilling workdays. Across the street, the decline of Chocolux was swift and brutal. The bright, trendy facade couldn't hide the emptiness within. Customers, armed with Rossi's review and swayed by the resurgent loyalty to El Cacao Dormido, stayed away. Javier's attempts to lure them back with desperate discounts failed. His smooth charm curdled into visible frustration. Suppliers, likely unpaid and aware of his failing reputation, became less accommodating. Elena saw Se Vende, for sale, signs appear on equipment being hauled out late one evening. Within 2 months of the review, Chocolux was shuttered. The windows were papered over. A stark white Se Alquila for rent sign was taped to the glass door where glossy flyers had once promised a modern chocolate revolution. Javier Moreno vanished from the neighborhood. Rumors circulated, massive debts, angry investors, a hasty departure from Seville altogether. Elena felt a complex mix of emotions, relief, profound and bone-deep, vindication, but also a lingering sadness. He was still family, however toxic the connection had become. The victory felt complete, but the scar of his betrayal remained, a reminder of the cost of protecting her legacy. One quiet afternoon, months later, Elena stood looking out at the bustling alley. El Cacao Dormido was thriving. The air hummed with happy chatter and the clink of cups. Mateo was expertly operating the gleaming espresso machine, a steady stream of customers waiting patiently. Senora Carmen waved from the doorway of her ceramics shop, a warm smile on her face. Elena took a deep breath, inhaling the rich scent of chocolate, not a ghost anymore, but a vibrant, living presence. She had faced the worst kind of betrayal, fought back with integrity and passion, and won. She had honored Abuela Sofia, not just by preserving her shop, but by infusing it with her own strength, her own heart. The path had been harder, the cost higher than she could have imagined when she first stepped back into this dusty, silent space. But looking around at the life she had rebuilt, the legacy she had secured, Elena knew, with absolute certainty, that it had been worth it. The sleeping cacao was well and truly awake. Life settled into a new rhythm, busy but fulfilling. Elena found joy not just in creation, but in the daily interactions. The regulars who shared snippets of their lives over morning chocolate, the wide-eyed tourists discovering the magic of real Spanish hot chocolate for the first time, the quiet camaraderie with Mateo. She expanded her offerings slightly, introducing seasonal specialties using local fruits, fig and dark chocolate bonbons in late summer, candied Seville oranges dipped in bittersweet chocolate during the winter months. Each creation was a careful balance, honoring Sofia's foundations while allowing Elena's own voice to emerge. She rarely thought of Javier. The space he had occupied, first as a vaguely annoying relative, then as a menacing rival, had shrunk, replaced by the demands and rewards of her own success. The broken family tie was a clean wound now, healed over though the scar remained. She heard nothing from him, nor did she seek any news. That chapter was closed, locked away like one of Sophia's less successful recipe experiments. One sweltering afternoon in July, when the scent of orange blossoms hung heavy in the air even inside the relatively cool shop, a hesitant figure appeared in the doorway. It was Javier's mother, Elena's tia Isabella. Elena hadn't seen her since before Sophia's death. Tia Isabella looked older, her usual sharp features softened by worry, her expensive clothes slightly rumpled. "Elena," she began, her voice strained. She glanced around the thriving shop, her eyes lingering on the happy customers, the full display cases. There was a flicker of something, pride, envy, regret, before her expression settled back into anxious lines. "I heard about Javier." Elena kept her expression neutral, wiping down the marble counter. "Tia." It was a polite acknowledgement, nothing more. Things are not good, Elena. He made some bad decisions. Lost everything." Tia Isabella wrung her hands, a gesture so unlike her usual composure that it startled Elena. "He's back home. He won't leave his room. His father is furious. I just wondered." She trailed off, unable to meet Elena's eyes. Elena understood the unspoken plea. Help him. Forgive him. Give him another chance. The old Elena, the one who had returned grieving and uncertain, might have wavered. But the woman standing here now, forged in the fire of betrayal and hard-won success, felt only a distant, weary clarity. "I'm sorry things are difficult for him, Tia," Elena said, her voice quiet but firm. "But Javier made his choices. He tried to destroy this place. He tried to destroy everything Abuela built, everything I've worked for." She gestured around the shop, encompassing not just the physical space but the intangible legacy. "There is nothing I can do for him now. Our paths are separate." Tia Isabella flinched as if struck. Tears welled in her eyes. "But Elena, he's family, blood. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It meant everything to me," Elena replied, the old hurt surfacing briefly before she controlled it. "It clearly didn't mean the same to him. Some ties, Tia, are broken for a reason, for survival." Her aunt stared at her, searching Elena's face for any sign of weakness, of yielding. Finding none, she seemed to deflate. Without another word, she turned and walked out, disappearing into the blinding civilian sunlight, leaving behind only the faint scent of expensive, fading perfume. Matteo, who had discreetly busied himself polishing the espresso machine during the exchange, caught Elena's eye. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod of approval. Signora Carmen, witnessing the encounter from her doorway across the alley, did the same. Community, loyalty, integrity. These were the ties that mattered now. Later that evening, after the last customer had left and the shop was quiet again, Elena sat alone at one of the small tables, sipping a cool glass of water. The encounter with her aunt had stirred embers she thought were long extinguished. It wasn't triumph she felt, but a profound sense of finality. The break was complete, necessary, irreversible. She looked at the portrait of Abuela Sofia that hung behind the counter, the mischievous sparkle in her eyes, the knowing curve of her lips. "I did it, Abuela," she whispered to the image. "I saved it, but it cost something." The portrait seemed to smile back, full of wisdom and understanding. Perhaps Sofia had always known about Javier's nature. Perhaps she had known Elena would have the strength to face it when the time came. Elena rose, stretching her tired muscles. Tomorrow would bring new batches of chocolate, new customers, new challenges. But El Cacao Dormido was safe. Its heart beat strong, infused with the spirit of two women, one who built the dream and one who fought fiercely to keep it alive. And in the quiet satisfaction of that knowledge, Elena found her peace, bittersweet and hard-earned, like the finest Andalusian dark chocolate. The legacy endured. The years that followed cemented El Cacao Dormido's reputation not just as a local institution, but as a destination for chocolate lovers visiting Seville. Elena's creativity flourished, grounded always in the respect for quality Sofia had taught her. She collaborated with local artisans. Signora Carmen designed exclusive ceramic cups for their hot chocolate. A nearby convent supplied exceptional candied violets for delicate bonbons. Matteo remained her steadfast right hand, his knowledge of the old ways perfectly complementing her innovative spirit. She never remarried. Her focus poured entirely into her craft and the small community she had built around the shop. Friendships deepened. Her bond with Signora Carmen became like that of a mother and daughter. Matteo was the loyal brother she never had. Her life was rich, full, defined not by what she had lost in the betrayal, but by what she had built in its aftermath. Occasionally, whispers about Javier would reach her, carried on the currents of family gossip reluctantly shared by distant cousins during Christmas gatherings or baptisms she attended out of a sense of detached duty. The stories were consistently bleak: failed ventures, mounting debts, isolation. He apparently blamed everyone but himself. The economy, unfair competition, bad luck, even Elena herself for not being supportive. Elena listened politely, offered no comment, and felt only a distant pity, quickly eclipsed by gratitude for her own hard-won peace. One crisp autumn afternoon, nearly a decade after Chocolux had imploded, Elena was arranging a new display of autumn-themed chocolates, infused with cinnamon, cloves, and local chestnuts, when the bell above the door chimed. She looked up, a welcoming smile ready, and froze. Javier stood there. He looked diminished. The sharp suit was gone, replaced by clothes that were clean but worn. The ambition in his eyes had been replaced by a hollow wariness, though a flicker of the old resentment still lingered beneath the surface. He was thinner, lines etched around his mouth and eyes that hadn't been there before. He clutched a small, slightly battered paper bag. Elena's heart gave a painful thud, an involuntary reaction to the ghost at her door. Matteo, arranging cups behind the counter, stiffened, his hand hovering protectively near the heavy metal tamper. "Elena," Javier said, his voice rough, hesitant. "Javier." She kept her voice level, betraying none of the turmoil inside. "What do you want?" He shifted his weight, avoiding her direct gaze. I was in the neighborhood, just passing through." He gestured vaguely with the paper bag. "I brought you something." Hesitantly, he placed the bag on the counter. Elena looked inside. It contained a handful of lumpy, misshapen chocolates, their surfaces dull, improperly tempered. They looked amateurish, almost childish. "I've been experimenting," Javier mumbled, "trying to get back on my feet. Thought maybe you could give me some advice, point me towards suppliers. I know things were bad between us, but—" Elena stared at the sad little chocolates, then up at her cousin. The audacity, even now, was breathtaking. After everything he had done, the theft, the sabotage, the attempt to ruin her, he came here, seeking help, advice, connections, as if the past decade hadn't happened, or as if it entitled him to her assistance now that he had failed. She remembered the sleepless nights, the crushing anxiety, the fear that had gnawed at her, the sheer effort it had taken to claw her way back from the edge he had pushed her towards.